Hello. Okay, we're going to welcome Miss Ayana Miller from King Elementary. She has taught first grade for several years, and she's here to discuss some questions that deal with the impact of curriculum of the curriculum in America. Over time, and we can go far back with this, but definitely over time, how things have changed. So, my first question: what do you see as the most significant historical events impacting the curriculum in your subject area or grade? For first graders.
Okay, well, historically, I would say in recent history, it would definitely be technology. If we're talking historically, years and years ago, it would definitely have to be the women's movement and the ending of slavery, where African Americans were able to now go to school and get an education. And same for women, because at one point women weren't allowed to attend school and become educated. So now that all children and people are allowed to go to school and get an education, that's definitely been for the betterment of women and African Americans. However, recently, a good impact on education has been technology. Technology has allowed us to do and implement things that we in the past have not been able to do. So Apple and the use of iPods and iPads in classrooms have definitely allowed teachers to meet the needs of all students, because you can allow students to, you can differentiate your instruction and meet the children where they are, and they can work on different things. So you're not just teaching, one concept to all students all at the same time, and you can kind of differentiate. So, and our county has iPod touches, we have laptops, and document cameras, smart boards, and all those things really allow teachers to engage your students into their lessons.
Okay, good. Do you think, as far as especially since you brought up the fact about the women's movement and slavery, what impact do you think that may have had on the curriculum in general, as far as, even then, were they printing out, lesson plans or,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely. And
what do you think?
that's a good point, because I think about sometimes I look in the books with my children or my students, and we just kind of reminisce on how school used to be a long time ago and how it is now, or even how people lived long ago. And specifically when we're talking about George Washington Carver, and I showed them how they had a chalkboard, or the kids nowadays don't even have an idea as to what that is, because now they can use a smart board or a dry erase board.
And it's so funny you say that. The other day, they had a box of chalk in the workroom, and I was like, is that really chalk? I had to peek in, and it was yellow sticks. I was like, oh, I want to take a picture. I should have had my phone. But see, there you go, that technology piece. I'm like, I need to show the kids.
Yeah, a lot of
It
those
really
things
existed.
it doesn't exist anymore. So yes, teachers now are forced, and a lot of our teachers, mostly veteran teachers, try to fight the technology movement, but you have to get on board. There's no way to get
There's
around
no way around it. I totally agree. All right, our next question. How do you view your role related to the creation, revision, implementation, and assessment of the curricular process?
My role. Well, in Clayton County, we honestly don't have any input in the creation of the curriculum. Primarily, our duties are to implement the curriculum as given to us. From what I understand, they do allow teachers, so a select group of teachers, to help create and revise the existing curriculum as needed, based upon the input from the teachers who've taught it throughout the year. And if we realize that maybe they need to change the scope and sequence and teach this before we teach that, they're trying to listen to the teachers and understand that as the people who have to implement it, they're trying to take all of their suggestions and change the curriculum as needed. But our goal is primarily to implement it, and we assess, but even most of our assessments come from the county. So it is given to us, and we have some flexibility on how we teach it. We just have to make sure that it is being taught.
Okay, good. Our next question. What do you see as the greatest hindrance to being able to effectively deliver curriculum? And this is an interesting question for teachers.
Interesting it is. And even as a new media specialist, I am realizing that it seems like there are not enough hours in the day.
Yes.
I know as a classroom teacher, and unfortunately, this has been the way it's been. In the very beginning, when I first started teaching in the county, everything was definitely get your reading and your math in. And so a lot of the children suffered when it was time to take the CRCT because they weren't getting the social studies and the science that they needed. And so they were really struggling on the standardized tests in the science and social studies area. Well, now that STEM has come around and they're trying to integrate science and technology, they're really trying to really integrate those things into the curriculum, which is the only way that you're really going to be able to maximize your time, because otherwise you don't have time for each and every subject, specifically in elementary, because as the one teacher who teaches everything in the lower grades, you run out of time. So time is a really big issue, and they want you to teach to mastery, but then you have some students who just, could really benefit from you going back and reviewing and making sure that they understand the concept, but you have to get everything in by a date, whether they have it or not. And so I would also say that policies, now there's so many things attached to teaching. You can't just teach. You have pay for performance. You have teach this. You have
the list goes on.
All these things you have to do, and you can't just teach because there's so many things. You have the RTI, and you have to wear so many hats that you don't just teach anymore. You have to do so many other things, and I think that is a big concern for teachers, veteran and new. You take a lot of work home, and
Yes.
you do a lot of work while you're at work, and there's still not enough time.
It's not enough time at all. I feel bad for the new teachers. It's hard for us. Been doing this for a while, but my goodness, poor little. We had one even the other day. I felt so bad for her, but I knew she was exhausted. I walked by and she has her head down on the desk. The door is wide open.
Oh, wow.
I knew she was, because we like, you don't do that. And I felt so bad, because I know they didn't teach you this in school. I know they didn't tell you this for, so. Because some of them tapping, like looking at you, be careful. I do understand though, but I'm looking at her like, you just don't know. Every other teacher in this hallway wants to do the same thing. But again, we have policies, you have to wait that out and go home. But, you can really tell where it's not enough time, and it affects just really affects everything. Okay, the next one, what do you see as the greatest asset in the current curriculum model?
Oh, the greatest asset in the current curriculum model. Well, now that we're in CCGPS, when we implemented it last year, we were one of the first counties to implement it before everyone else. What I really liked was that although it's kind of strict, I felt like I had more freedom to teach what I wanted to teach, as long as I taught it. So even though we had our curriculum guide, if we were talking about animals, I didn't have to just use what was in the book. I could go and get my own books that were about animals. So instead of reading the story that was in the book, maybe I read Stella Luna. As long as I was teaching the standard, I had more flexibility to use whatever materials I wanted, as long as I was still getting the information. I also like that Common Core does try and integrate technology and science and social studies into reading, instead of keeping them as separate entities, and try and get the children to read more informational text so that they become help with their reading comprehension, because when they take the standardized test, that's an area that they really suffer with, because they aren't as versed in informational text as they are in fiction. So I do like that they do allow you to have a little bit more flexibility. Some people don't feel that way, but for me, last year when I taught it, it felt like my first year teaching, because I was able to do so many things that I had not been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I just could teach.
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds kind of hypocritical, but I could
teach.
But it was kind of freeing in a sense. I had, a lot of it was hands-on. And so we did a lot of learning tasks and a lot of performance tasks. And, I'm glad that there wasn't a lot of worksheets, because I'm not a worksheet person.
Yes.
So I really did enjoy the fact that we could do a lot of things, and that they could work in cooperative groups, and they can make things, and we can show this is what we did, and this is the process we did to do it. So I like that.
And I agree, and I think most of the veteran teachers kind of feel that way, where you feel like for once you get a chance to kind of start over, and it was a good feeling. It wasn't starting over like, oh my goodness, it was, ooh, we get to do the fun stuff again, and still teaching those standards, but you can kind of get excited again about the curriculum. So I agree. Okay, and also, where do you see the curriculum for your subject area or grade in the next 10 years?
Oh wow, in the next 10 years. Well, I look at where it was, let's say 10 years ago when I first started teaching, and I can see that the information, we want the children to know the information a lot sooner than they did once upon a time. So now what they're doing in first grade, 10 years ago they weren't doing until second or third grade, and now they're doing it in first grade, and it's just kind of coming down the pipe a lot sooner than it used to be. And I know we want to compete globally, and we want to be able to compete with a lot of these other countries, but it's definitely going to be a challenge in order, because unlike a lot of the other countries, we educate everybody. Some of these countries that we're trying to compare ourselves to, they don't educate everyone.
Yeah.
If you can't afford, you can't go. And if we think that you're going to bring our scores down, you can't come to school. So trying to increase the rigor in the content, some children are getting left behind because we're trying to say, well, you guys need to know this now, you need to know it now, when ultimately they may not be developmentally ready to learn the content. And so I think that's where we're losing some of our children, because we want them to know the information a lot sooner instead of just meeting them where they are. So in 10 years, I can see first grade is probably going to be what kids are doing in third grade now. They're probably going to be, right now in first grade, we're already, last year, you're introducing, by the end of the year, addition with regrouping and, writing essays. So in 10 years, I can just imagine where it's going to be. But I think it's going to definitely get harder, and it's going to be more of a challenge. But I just hope we can sustain it. I hope we have the materials that we need to.
And you bring up a good point with that. Definitely the materials that we will need, the resources to truly compete globally.
Exactly.
Well, all right. Well, thank you so much for, coming and doing this interview session. It's a really great session, and thank you. You have anything you want to say before we close up, or?
No, I hope that I was able to answer your questions, and that I appreciate you asking me, and I think we learned a lot from each other.
And I do as well, and I thank you for, taking the time out of your busy, like you said, it's not enough time in the day, so just thank you for coming out and doing this interview session for me, and, so thank you so much, and that's it.